Good evening, church. I wanted to talk to you tonight a little bit about how the elders and leadership have been thinking about uh, the decision on when we can gather together again in worship. We've been very conscious that we never closed church, and I think that's really important that everyone understands. We have been doing online services for these past 10 weeks. We've been able to support our ministries. We have things going out to the children. Madi's been running basically more or less nonstop youth activities on Zoom. So the work of church has continued. But we're very much aware that I think all of us would really like to get back together again in worship. We'd like to come together on Sunday morning to be able to sing and pray and hug and get back together and worship the way we did, just 10 weeks ago. And so I wanted to just take this opportunity to talk to everyone about that decision and kind of what we've been thinking about in leadership. Let me start by saying that I think the decision to gather together, to assemble again for worship, really, it's a three-legged stool. I'm borrowing this from another local minister, but I think it's a good way to think about the problem. The first leg of that stool is what's legally allowed. Um, the state, up until recently, would not allow us together at all. It wouldn't allow any non-essential businesses to be open. And Randy preached a great sermon this Sunday on kind of how we thought about that. And I really recommend that everyone, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it because Randy really laid out how we've been thinking about that. To just summarize that for a second, we didn't view this as a restriction on, our religious liberty. We viewed this as something people were doing to protect us. And so the first thing is we've tried very hard and will continue to try to comply with the state guidance. We're doing that because we feel that that's the biblical thing to do when people are trying to protect you and not persecute you. And Randy, I think, laid this out really beautifully in his sermon. The second leg of the stool, so that's the first leg. And I guess before I get to the second leg, I should say part of the reason that I'm coming to you on this video is that something has changed there. The state has now given us some guidelines saying you can sort of come together and worship following these guidelines. And honestly, the guidelines are pretty good from sort of what we know about COVID-19 and what the risks are. The state is really trying to do a balancing act that allows people to sort of worship, but to say these are some things you really need to be careful about. It's very dangerous. Look, bluntly, one of the most dangerous things we can do right now is come together in an unventilated space, sing, hug, and be together. That is a very, very high transmission mechanism of the virus. And so the state is really offering us some guidelines on how to avoid people getting sick. And so the first leg of this stool is we really need to follow that guidance, whatever we decide to do. The second leg of the stool is safety. As Randy pointed out in his sermon, we decided actually to close a week early. We decided, even before the state had issued the shelter-in-place order, that we needed to, for the safety of our members, not meet that Sunday. So the second is safety. Not just the safety of our members, but also the safety of our staff and sort of others. Can we come together in a way that not only meets with the state guidance, but that we think is safe? I will say on both of these, the state guidance and what we have decided is safe, the evidence on this is constantly evolving. Look, things that people told us even a month ago about this virus turn out to not be true. Things that we thought were perfectly fine a month ago turn out not to be safe. It's called the novel coronavirus for a reason. People really we don't really understand it. And I think in light of that, one of the things I would ask all of us to do for each other and also for sort of our leaders in government is to have a little grace. And I mean that sincerely. I think we as Christians, maybe more than anybody else, need to understand that people are fallible, and we have been forgiven for those failings. But in gratitude for that, we should allow others to be imperfect as well. And so, I think anything, I should say anything we decide on safety, and certainly anything we decide on compliance of the state, that's going to be month to month. We're planning to meet next week to talk about this again. We're planning to meet much more regularly and just reassess. What do we know? What's the sort of evidence suggest? Could we do something different than we've been doing? So everything I'm saying is sort of month to month, and everything really is uncertain. The last thing, leg of the stool, is it practical? Let me explain what I mean by this. Here's the issue. We're really putting a lot of demands on our staff right now. Look, one of the great things that has happened for Sunny Hills since this pandemic hit is that we've really ramped up an online ministry. We have virtual services, we have virtual children's programs, our youth activities have sort of gone online. That's really an amazing transformation in 10 weeks. And as Randy said, we are reaching thousands of people, at least measured by our hits on social media. To give you some idea, all the work we put into the children's musicals, all the work we put into Vacation Bible School, imagine that we had sort of ramped up another ministry that was having sort of a similar impact to that, and we'd done it in such a short period of time. So I say this because as we contemplate coming back together, one of the things we need to think about is the demands we're putting on our staff, on our membership. So here's why I say this. We're going to reach out to you with a survey. And that survey is going to have two options for ways we think we could safely come back together. But what I really want to ask you about right now is whether it's worth it. And I mean that sincerely. So here are the two options. Option number one is we could come together in drive-in church. Other churches have done this. Basically what you do is you get a low wattage FM transmitter. We've ordered one of those. And you come together and Randy would preach a sermon, a song leader would lead singing, but everyone would stay in their cars. That actually cuts down on the risk because if people sing, if they say amen, gross as this is, the spray doesn't envelop everyone, and it's not as much risk. But it's going to feel really artificial. We can't get out and say hello to each other. We can't sort of greet each other. We would need people to stay in their cars. So that's option one. Option two would be that we come together outside. We do a service in our parking lot. We need to limit the number of people that could attend. Perhaps we could do one or two services like that, but it would have to be fairly limited. We would probably need to wear masks. That means there wouldn't be singing. We would have to figure out ways to sort of socially distance sort of in that environment. So again, it's going to feel very artificial. So here's what the survey is asking you. We're not asking people to vote on what to do. We're asking, would you come to one of those two, and would you come sort of more than once? Here's what I mean. The issue we have is it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of effort on the part of our staff. We're going to need volunteers to sort of help set this up. And to be honest, my concern is that once we do that, it's going to feel really artificial. Once we get to see each other again, once we come together and we feel like we've had a chance to be together, that people are going to, after a week or two, feel like this isn't assembling for worship. I was better off online. No matter what, we're going to keep doing the virtual service. It's reaching a lot of people, but I think the thing that I need from you is pray a little bit about this, pray a lot about this, and give some thought as to whether this is something that you want to do, either the drive-in service or the socially distanced outside service. We feel it's just too dangerous and too uncertain right now to come back together in our building, and certainly to come back together in our building with any number of people. Um, a few other options that may be off in the future. We're trying right now to figure out how to do live streaming of our service, so that it didn't have to be pre-recorded. We have an internet problem. I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of people who have been exceptionally generous in helping us get the equipment we need to get the virtual services up and running. And if you'd like to help out financially with getting the streaming services going, please reach out. We could really use your help financially, or if you have expertise in this area. But that's a ways off. We still haven't solved our internet problem at church. So these are the two options on the table: an outside socially distanced service or a drive-in service. So please take a moment, fill out the survey, let us know if either of those are things that you think you would continue going to as a substitute for in-person worship in our building. And thank you. And I hope you're all well, and I hope to see you really soon.